Let's get started with AI. So, we are going to build a very simple application which is powered by AI, and yet it's surprisingly reliable. And I will explain why it is reliable on day one. And if you have ever felt overwhelmed by this vast ecosystem of AI with models, inferences, workflows, agents, not to mention about the system design that comes with any apps, you're not alone. And this video is more or less a short cut to understanding and building AI powered system without getting lost in that noise. And if you're familiar with the term AI agent already, now, are we going to build an AI agent on day one? Not in its complete sense, but this is definitely the first step. And the purpose of this video is basically to set you up into the space of AI ecosystem. Is this an AI workflow? Again, if you're familiar with that term already, the app that we are going to set up is not exactly an AI workflow. And we can discuss all these details in the upcoming tutorials. So, I already mentioned about AI agent. So what was that? So it's an app which is autonomous. It senses the world around it and it decides what to do, and it does that. It also learns from its own actions by making use of, at least in the current definition, in the current space of AI, it makes use of LLM models under the hood. Now, think of it as a decision-making engine. It can be a decision-making engine. It could be a smart assistant. And the fact is that it is autonomous and it knows what to do next. So let's build this as quickly as possible. And to begin with, we need to get familiarized with this new open source project called Golem, which allows you to deploy secure AI apps reliably with a very reliable state management, and it scales effortlessly. So by setting an AI app on day one, we are already into the space of enterprise grade applications, not just a very toy example that you have to further build a lot more on top of it to get things going. And we are making use of Golem to do this, to bypass many of the complexities that comes with building any reliable app. So this open source project, the Golem, is evolving very rapidly. There are so many contributions going on to this project in GitHub every day. And it is turning out to be a go-to framework for developers who want to build something real without getting into the complexity, as I mentioned. And it is in fact one of the quickest ways to developing AI apps, be it agent or workflows or smart assistants, reliably without the hassle of system design complexity. There is no database involved, there is no Kafka involved, there is no separate mechanism to make sure that your state of the app is reliable, and all that we care is building AI powered apps. And as an added benefit, by familiarizing with Golem, you're not only getting onboarded yourself into the space of AI, but you're also onboarded to the space of WebAssembly. We are not going to cover any details of WebAssembly in this video. As I mentioned, it is a setting up video, setting yourself into the space of AI. But if you're not familiarized with the term WebAssembly yet, as software engineers, it's high time we do that. So it's a completely full bleeding edge tech, and it's good to be on the start of the wave instead of being very late to understand all these ecosystem. So once again, all you care now is designing an AI powered app, just writing enough code to get something going reliably. And we will bypass other classical system design problems by making use of Golem to run your AI app. So with that out of the way, let's jump on to hands-on. There are a few prerequisites. One is to create an OpenAI API key. An OpenAI API key is a secret code that allows you to use OpenAI's AI services like GPT. The second one, which is quite specific to the app that we are setting up, you need to create a GitHub token, an access token. And please be aware that it has to be a classical token. It has to be a classical token. There are multiple options in the developer settings in GitHub when it comes to creating tokens. So you have to make sure it is a classical token, and you have to select notifications and repo in the list of access. The third one is basically we are developing a Python app. So you have to set up the Python tool chain, and basically all that you need to have is UV. That's the underlying build tool that we're going to be using to run our Python app. And this segment, which is about setting up a few toolings, not everything is required on day one. However, I would like you to try and install all of those toolings, which is more specific to WebAssembly. For those curious ones, they are mostly just about WebAssembly toolings. And it's good to have these toolings on day one, because in the upcoming videos, it'll then become more easy to just use these toolings whenever required. And the last one is nothing but installing the Golem itself. And since if you have already set up these toolings, and it comes with Rust ecosystem, and Rust ecosystem comes with Cargo build tool, so you can use Cargo itself to install a tag release version of Golem. We are using 1.2.5. We are not using any dev releases. However, there is a fair bit of bug fixes and improvements that went into the latest dev releases in Golem. However, we will still stick on to a release version, which is 1.2.5. And what exactly are we going to build? It's dead simple. Please don't think that we are going to make $1 million out of this video. It's building a GitHub AI assistant, which gets the notifications from your in your GitHub profile. So you have notifications. You make use of GitHub API to get those notifications. We ensure that we fetch only the latest notifications. So you must have sent request to get the notifications for yesterday. So when you do it today, you have to make sure that you are getting the notifications only for today. So which means you have to keep a state of what has been done until now in your app itself. And again, to keep that state is very dead simple when if you are using it with Golem, that you don't really need any database or anything, and it will still going to stay reliable. And the last step is to ask an LLM model to categorize and get these output in a structured way. For example, get the summary of these issues. And the main focus here is that we are using an LLM model. We have a state in the application, and then we are setting up just enough things to get us going into the space of AI. So let's go to the terminal. And here I have already installed all the toolings, all the stuff that I have already mentioned. I have created my GitHub tokens. I have created the OpenAI token. The next step is to run a Golem server. And since you have already installed Golem executable, you can just say Golem server run clean, and your server is up and ready. The next step is to actually build the app. And that is simple as well. You can create Golem app new, create an app with Golem app new, specify an application name, which is, I'm going to say my agent. And these are the list of languages that Golem supports. Like, you can create AI powered apps in any of these languages, but we are going to select Python. And it comes with 3 templates: a default template, a Git Pulse agent template, and WASI HTTP. Don't worry about the first and the last one. Since we are focused on AI, we are selecting the second one, which is a AI application for improving GitHub notifications. Now, package name, it has to be of certain format. So I'm going to call it as my agent. So there are two options again here. It's about adding another component. And I haven't explained what is a component, and hence we are not going to use that option anyway. We are going to straight away create the application. So application is created. Now let's simply, before we do anything with this app, we are going to go into the app in VS Code and update the configurations, especially the OpenAI token that we created already. So let's do that. So in Golem YAML under components Python, this is our project. And there is a directory called as components-python. There you can see Golem YAML in it. And in this, there is a configuration called as OpenAI API key. And here we update the OpenAI API key. Now we go back to the terminal. We are already in that project. Simply do Golem app deploy. Sorry, we are not in that directory. So we have to go into the directory, my agent, and then do Golem app deploy. This is going to take a little while. And the app is deployed into the Golem server. This would mean that the app is always active in your server, which means it's live in your server. It won't take up any resources if it's doing nothing. But here you have to understand this idea that you can interact with that app at any time. So what do you mean by interaction? In the Python app, there are several functions that we have implemented. And interaction means we are able to call those functions in that app anytime. And the best way to interact with the application, which is already deployed in Golem server, is to spin up a Golem REPL. So Golem REPL is one of the easiest way to interact with that app. So we are going to use this app straight away without even getting into what exactly was built there, what was the exact code there. You just experiment Golem REPL. And this is Golem REPL, and the only line that you would need to learn or get familiarized is to create an instance, and this is that. Let x is equal to instance, and this is all autocomplete. An instance take an argument of the type string, and you provide some name to that instance. And what does this do? This is basically, to simplify the explanation, this is basically creating an instance of the app itself. It's very similar to creating an instance of a class. It's very similar to many other programming languages. So by creating an instance and assigning it to variable x, now x has access to every functions that we have implemented as part of the Python app. What does that mean? From now on, everything is going to be super intuitive. If you are already into many languages, you know the dot syntax to call a function. So x dot, keep clicking tabs to understand what are the different type of functions available. And the first function that we are going to call is initialize. Functions take arguments. So you open up a parenthesis. Now what do I need to give here? Well, you click a tab and it is going to autocomplete with a value that sticks on to the structure of the argument which that function initialize expects. And I'm not going to explain what is the type of this argument. Instead, we are just going to update the values of this GitHub username and GitHub auth token, which obviously looks wrong. Auth token is something that we have already created, the classical GitHub access token, which I mentioned in the hands-on slide. So let's update this with the actual token. And my username is Afzaltaj. Initialized it. And again, there are two functions that starts with the prefix GE. So if you start with the prefix, it is only going to list those functions that start with that prefix. So the next step is get what's new. Again, this is a function implemented in Python in our app. We will see that in 2 minutes. And this is going to take a little while. Meanwhile, we'll go back to VS Code and just skim through the code. The intention of this video is not to get in-depth details about what is written there line by line, but instead we will have a quick high-level understanding of what's in there. So within this app, in component Python directory, you have component py. So here, there is a state class representing probably the global state of this application. The next thing is LLM configuration, large language model config. This comes from actually a library exposed from the Golem ecosystem, but we don't need to worry about that now. We are just specifying the model, which is the LLM model, and that model is from OpenAI, and we specify GPT-4.1 Nano and a helper function to get the state. And here is the initialize function that we just invoked from the REPL. Once again, I would like to point out that we are not going to explain the structure of this app, but you have to, you're already seeing one thing here. It's a very simple Python app itself. There is no decorations and too much usage of Golem specific SDKs here. These functions are raw Python functions for the most part of it. And initialize function just initializes the state. And here is the next function that we invoked, which is called as get what's new. What are the new notifications? And the first step there is update notifications. What does this do? First of all, it does look at the current state of the app. Now, this is an interesting part. This state is not from any database or any other persistent store out there. It's a simple global state of the Python app itself. It's an in-memory state. And that's reliable because you're writing this and deploying this into Golem ecosystem. So you don't need to really worry about the reliability of that state. And hence you can completely skip things like database. And on day one itself, you get a very reliable state for your AI app. And since is the last checked time, so when was the application sending notifications to the GitHub API last time, and before is the current time, and now we need to get the notifications only for that time period, which is from since to now. And then we iterate through all those notifications and then we process that notification. And here is the interesting portion where we use the LLM model. So you can obviously directly use the LLM API calls, or you can use the Golem LLM library. This is what we use here, and there are so many advantages of using it. It makes your life easy, and it's there are so much of development going into that space in recent times. So you can send this notification, you can send this prompt to the LLM model, and the only thing you have to note here is that it should be of a specific format, which is model response format. So get me a result by processing this notification in this format. And LLM model is going to give you the output in that format. And that's it. That's the core of this application, and we will do a deep dive into this application a lot more in the upcoming videos and make changes to it, because to make changes into this app, you need to understand a few little things. You can make minor changes into this app straight away and redeploy, but we will cover that in detail in the next video. So going back to the terminal, here you can see the function invoked get what's new gave you some results. Again, we will process these results or parse these results later, but you have to know that this is already making use of an LLM model. It is already a reliable app with a reliable state, and by doing this, and if you have successfully got until here, we can call it as a success. So what next? What is our next step in the upcoming videos? Well, we are going to make changes in this app, as I mentioned, and we are going to customize this behavior, and this will allow you to get familiarized with the entire stack. And once you're familiarized with the stack, especially Golem, we simply focus on building apps. We will talk about the real domain and keep building apps. And as I mentioned, most of these code base will look dead simple. In fact, you can use ChatGPT to generate many of that Python code and simply put this into Golem. There can be issues here and there, and this, for example, if you are not fully following the instructions in this video, probably you might end up having some errors, and you need to iterate it twice. And one of the purpose of this video is to make sure that your first iteration itself is a success. And please let me know in comments if you have any problems while you install the toolings or while you were running this app, because that is important to follow the upcoming videos. And that's it for this one, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everyone.